Hello, everyone. Welcome to the second episode of Mediterranean Voices, the podcast of Mediterranean Dialogue. This time, we're going to be discussing something very important related always to the illegal migration in the Mediterranean and beyond. The title of our episode is From South Asia to Spain, the long journey of irregular migration. So it's not directly linked to the Mediterranean region, but it ends up in the Mediterranean and in Spain, and it comes all the way from Asia. We have two very esteemed guests today, wherever you are watching this podcast. It's Dr. Maria José Rodríguez. She is the co-founder and president of Netwomening, an NGO based in Madrid. And since August 2021, she has led a project supporting Afghan women seeking asylum in Spain, assisting over 300 women and their families in rebuilding their lives in Spain. And we also have Dr. Salman, the founder and executive director of PRIME, a Policy Research Institute of Market Economy, a public policy think tank based in Pakistan. PRIME works to advance economic freedom and evidence-based policy reform in the country, and he is also part of the international members of Mediterranean Dialogue, and he is a solid member of our organization. Welcome to both of you. Very happy to have you here.
Thank you, Tasneem.
Thank you, Tasneem, and thank you to Mediterranean Dialogue for organizing this.
Thank you. So we're going to be alternating in our discussion between the situation in Afghanistan and Pakistan in relation to the illegal migration to Spain. So we have three main sections today that we're going to discuss. The first one is understanding the routes and drivers of illegal migration from these countries to Spain, and then arrival, asylum, and integration in Spain. And finally, rethinking migration policies, the solution for the future. So let's start with the very first section. So as far as understanding the routes and drivers is concerned, the first question is to Dr. Maria. So, as far as your work is concerned with the Afghan women, what have you heard from these women you supported about their migration journeys all the way from Afghanistan, different parts of Afghanistan, to Spain? What are the main highlights, the stories you heard?
Okay, thank you, Tasneem. Well, firstly, I would say like to highlight that Afghan women that I usually support are usually regular migrants in Spain. I mean, they are in Spain legally, but sometimes it's true that sometimes they find themselves in an irregular situation, for example, without visas, or, well, in some different kind of situations in different countries as they transit through different countries on their journey. For example, traveling through Pakistan, Iran, or Turkey. I could later focus on these kind of situations. But when they finally arrive in Spain, they ask for asylum, and their requests are usually accepted because I am, as I said, focus helping Afghan women. In the case of people from other countries, from Pakistan, from Iran, but from other nationalities, not always they get the asylum so easily. I mean, the situation now in Afghanistan is so clear, is the situation for women, specifically, or children, girls or boys in Afghanistan, is the lack of recognition of human rights, the situation, the threats that they are facing, especially when they are in under some circumstances due to their jobs, their former jobs, or their links with the former regime, or their links with European countries, or American or other foreign countries, or just their life, or their religion, of course. They usually, they face so threats that the asylum is, I cannot say automatically, but almost very sure when they get Spain. The problem is to get Spain because and then I can focus later on the process that Spain has developed and what it expected when they arrived in Spain. But until this moment, their situation are really difficult because the countries as to pass to ask for asylum to Spain. So the countries where Spain has diplomatic representation are usually Pakistan or Iran. Sometimes, well, I have dealt with families that have came through Emirates, through Turkey, or through Iraq. But the main, well, the what is more easy for them is to go through the land, through the frontiers illegally to Pakistan or Iran, and then they get the embassies of some European countries, and in my case, Spain. So what I can advise to them is how to address a petition to the Spanish embassy to ask for the humanitarian visa to travel to Spain, and then they can request for asylum once in Spain.
So it's a pretty smooth process for Afghanis themselves, like specifically this nationality because of the situation in Afghanistan.
Yes, yeah, the situation, is usually they have to flee, leaving everything, documents, for example. They cannot travel with documents because it put them in a specific risk. Yes. I also know of some Afghan families who have arrived in Spain on boats over the Mediterranean irregularly, but I haven't personally dealt with any such cases. But until so the cases that I usually are knowing about in Spain have came through the Spanish embassy in Pakistan or Iran or the other countries I have said, so they can in the end get a flight to come to Spain by plane. The problem, well, is to give evidences enough to submit the request with evidences and to have an interview in the Embassy of Spain, for example, in Tehran, and provide enough documentation to give evidence about their situation in Afghanistan. If they can prove that their lives were under threat, that their lives or integrity were at risk if they were returned or deported to Afghanistan, usually they are accepted to come to Spain to ask for asylum. The problem is that, as I said, they usually leave very quick. They cannot get documentation to prove. So sometimes they have electronic documentation. They can recuperate some documents or keep them in a secure drive, for example, and they can get it. But usually it is based more on their experiences, situations that they have faced. For example, I am dealing with or supporting a lot of widows whose husband were dead or with children disappeared, brothers or sisters in prison. The situations, they are usually women who had been working in favor of human rights, education for women and girls.
And these are the ones that are targeted the most.
Yes.
Right? Yeah. Okay, such a long journey, but it's good to know that they are getting help from the Spanish embassies in different countries. So, for example, many people thought that it's like a long journey by land. That would be really crazy, like from Afghanistan to Spain. So it's good to know that they're getting some help officially. Question to you, Ali. as far as Pakistan is concerned right now. So, what are the main economic, social, political drivers behind irregular migration from South Asia, especially from Pakistan in this case?
Yes, I think before I come to this question, I could not help sharing my personal reflection on what Maria was saying, because when I drive to my office every day in Islamabad,
Mhm.
I pass in front of Afghanistan embassy. So it's about I think maybe 500 or 700 meters from where I'm sitting right now. And every day I see people waiting in queues, in long queues, waiting for their papers, verification, and all that administrative process. And I can't just help thinking about the ordeal and the problems which they have faced over the last few years, in last particularly 3 or 4 years in Pakistan, while in Pakistan, when they had to leave Afghanistan. And also I think Pakistan then and Afghanistan had not enjoyed best of relationships in last couple of years, I must say, which has led to an increasing pressure on actually Pakistan has been pushing them back to Afghanistan. And that has raised some international concerns also, because it was, of course, by international law, it is the responsibility of Pakistan, being the neighbor country, to take care, which we have done over the last few decades. But unfortunately, the geopolitical situation has not been very helpful in after the change in administration in Kabul, and so yeah, I think that is ongoing challenge. So I'm glad to hear that they're getting some assistance in Spain and other countries, as Maria explained. So coming back to your question about social, political, and economic reasons, I think, and one normally tend to think that it could be solely or purely an economic reason, because let's say there are youth unemployment issues, people are looking for better jobs, people are looking for well-paying jobs, um, and it could be a political issue, which is like coming from, let's say, the absence of political stability, absence of peace, or presence of conflict. But I must say that I think in this case, we're talking about especially illegal migration. I don't see economic or political reason at the top. There are contributing factors, but I think it's mostly to do with the social reason. And uh, and people see lifestyle. People see lifestyle changes. People see that those who have been successful after, let's say, after illegal migration to European countries, they have made quick bucks, and then those who want to follow, they have lots of, like, they have assets, they have cash. So it's not that they're extremely poor people. They would sell some of their assets uh, to follow that journey, follow that risky journey. And it's like look like copying others, like and thinking and imagining that okay, we have to be there because this guy has built a nice house or a nice car in a few years. So while there is an economic incentive, but underlying is also a social behavior that we just have to follow. So I think I would definitely include all these factors, but I think social is probably most important one right now. And this is also visible in the fact that while Pakistan has been appearing in the news when it comes to illegal migration, still numbers as compared with the other, we have a huge foreign work for, like a lot of Pakistanis work outside different countries legally. About 10 million Pakistanis, about 10 million Pakistanis working in different countries in the world.
That's all of Tunisia.
That's all of Tunisia. Well,
Yeah.
here you go. So 10 million people. So and yes, increasingly, thousands of Pakistanis are also using the illegal route. So in terms of the number, they are there, and taking the risk, huge risk on their life. I think it's to do with the social reasons, but we can talk more about it.
Sure, that's super interesting. Like one would say it's purely economic, but it's like the underneath is always social, and maybe also the exposure of lifestyles on social media and what people can achieve. So it's the attitude like, why not me? So
Yeah.
let me just try, even if it's risky. Okay, so a couple of questions to both of you, and you can jump in whenever you want. So can you map out the most common routes people take from South Asia to Spain? Like how dangerous is this journey? I mean, I'm not talking about those who get help from, embassies to get on a flight. I'm talking about those who need to do the literal journey, like from South Asia to Spain, whether by land or sea or whatever means they could have. And what roles do smugglers and trafficking networks play in facilitating this migration? I'm sure there will be many of these people, networking to get this done, of course, illegally. And what are the alternative legal pathways often inaccessible for these populations? Because had they had any legal pathways like easily getting the visas or anything like that, a legal, work contracts, they wouldn't resort necessarily to the illegal ways and illegal migration. So if anyone wants to jump in.
Perhaps Ali has more experience and more cases. In my case, talking only about Afghan people, except the cases that try to get legally, it is through Turkey. From Afghanistan through Iran and then Turkey is the most, when they decide not to wait to ask for asylum in a legal way, because it can take more than 3 years waiting in Pakistan or in Iran. And if for Pakistanis in some cases, it is hard. We can imagine the situation of an illegal Afghan in Pakistan. The situation is very, very hard. We can talk about that later. When they decide not to wait, I have heard about the road through Iran and Turkey. The images I have seen in the border with Iran, between Iran and Turkey, are very hard, with a lot of violence, mainly men. I sometimes ask, where are the rest of your family? Where is the rest of your family? Where are the children, the wives, the women? They try to get Europe through Turkey, mainly the men, and I suppose but I'm not totally sure. But in any case, my answer when they ask is always to avoid such dangerous roads, because drawings and boats sinking are an everyday occurrence, and we don't know about. For example, smugglers and their intervention, the cases I'm involved are not connected with people traffickers, except in some cases. I have come into contact with some terrible cases. For example, I remember the siblings of an Afghan woman I was supporting here in Spain. They were in a very difficult situation, so they decided to get into Pakistan with the aid of smugglers, with the intention to continue then the trip, but it was very hard. But if they have money, if they are families that had a position in Afghanistan, who I think are the most cases of people that get Spain because of their position, judges, lawyers, doctors, indeed journalists. If they had resources, they try to get a visa, even paying, to Pakistan, and then to wait until getting an appointment with an embassy. But it is hard to wait in a country for some years without access to health or to education for their children, except paying. And they cannot. They cannot support their families in Pakistan, because it is more expensive than to live in Afghanistan, and usually they don't have job permits. Well, they never have job permits, so it is hard to get a job. So I don't know your experience, Ali, but mine is that in the most of the cases, they have to wait under these circumstances.
Oh yeah, I agree with that. I think they just have to wait, and increasingly the opportunities for them in terms of the work are very scarce. There has been, unfortunately, also the many complaints that some of Afghanistan or Afghan citizens has also used Pakistani immigration documents. So that's another becoming a major problem. Of course, this is a problem which Pakistan administration needs to look into, but that has been reported, and that has created more problems because then they can claim jobs here because of the common Pashtun or Pakhtun ethnicity across between Pakistan and Afghanistan. So and some of their families have also lived here long enough to understand local customs. So
They can
so
pretend to be Pakistanis, like
sorry,
they can pretend to be Pakistanis and they can fool the authorities to that extent.
that's right. Yeah, it is possible.
Yeah, for perhaps for Pashtuns, but for
Pashtuns,
example,
yes.
yeah, other ethnicities, is very difficult for Hazaras. I think indeed that they prefer the route to Iran in the case of the Hazaras or other ethnicities.
Yes, yeah, there are different nationalities. I mean, as I think Maria was saying about the routes they're using, I agree with that. I mean, on overland route is Pakistan, Iran, Turkey, and then from Turkey to Greece and to Spain. But we have also seen like a sea route being taken, and for sea, Pakistanis are going to UAE mostly, and they would arrive in UAE on a visit visa. It used to be very liberal visa regime for Pakistanis, but very recently, I believe due to similar concerns, there has been very significant restrictions on visa to Pakistanis. So actually, there for a few months they put a ban on even visas because they were like refining some of the procedures, and they actually UAE authorities had to mention a few cities
Okay.
like in Pakistan, that if the applicant of visa is from, let's say, particular cities in Punjab, in this case, for instance, Gujarat or other cities from which the pattern is known, the pattern of illegal migrants is known, then they would not give visa because there will be high suspicion that it will be misused, and that person would not stay in UAE, but then he will go to Libya, in most of the cases, and from Libya he a boat to Mediterranean Sea, right, and
Wow.
and from there to Spain. And also there is a new route, as I understand, which is from UAE to Mauritania, and then some of them ultimately land at Canary Islands in Spain through the Atlantic Ocean. And so these are the different routes which they are taking. I think this also shows both the frustration, but also heightened risk they want to take on their lives. Yeah. And if you ask about, I missed a part of your question. If you asked about the challenges which they had to face, typically,
Yeah.
I think they have to pay something like $10,000 on average, just for a boat from Libya to Europe. So only that journey typically costs them. So it's a significant amount of money for an average Pakistani. And as I said, this means that they must have brought some resources with them to enable them. And yes, the treatment is very harsh, and there have been cases, more than one cases, in which hundreds of Pakistanis have lost their life on this journey. And I think this has sparked interest from Pakistani authorities in the last couple of years. Government is trying to make some reforms or enforcement and improvement of enforcement, but still we haven't seen much on the ground.
That's very interesting. So you've talked about, the legal pathways being inaccessible in the case of the UAE, like restricting the normal visa. Don't you think that, they will always find a way around that? Like if you're not giving me the legal, pathway, I will find a way around it and still become an illegal migrant. Like how do we balance between these two things? It's a dilemma. Like I'm going to
Yeah,
be an illegal migrant anyway, whether through like overstaying a visa or
yeah,
finding an illegal pathway on my own. So what, like, it's a question to both of you, like what are the possible solutions? I know it's $1 million question, but like how do we balance between these two things? Do we target the mindsets? Do we raise awareness? Do we provide like as authorities, of course, and civil society activists, do we provide like projects for them? Like what is the solution here? Because clearly they're always going to find ways, especially the smugglers and the networkers, not the people that are like they're just oppressed, or they're trying to find a better lifestyle or something, but just stopping these smugglers from abusing these people. How do we do that?
yeah. You want me to answer or Maria?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
First,
Well,
and then
well, in my view, I think there have been sort of crackdown on we call human smugglers, and there have been various raids in last few months coming up in the news, in which various gangs, smugglers have been caught, and FIA, in our case, Federal Investigation Agency, which is responsible for such cases, has been tasked to actually apprehend, to arrest them, to prosecute cases against them. There had also been, several changes in the immigration at the airport counter, because that's where actually it happens. And so, if the officials in the immigration departments are somehow part of the network, then it will happen. It will continue to happen. So that is the checkpoint we need to stop. And On the other hand, the when we talk about the mindset, I think we definitely need to have better education at home, better in terms of skills which can be used, and then which can actually enable for legal immigration. Because when you are unskilled and you're looking for quick return, quick money, you want to become rich in matter of a couple of years, then obviously you will take all these risks. But if you are skilled in whatever field you are, and then you would like to take a more legal and more safe route, so we have to invest in that. We have to invest in the education and the skill of those young people, and at the same time we have to increase the capacity, the enforcement capacity, in terms of the laws, but also the implementation of these laws.
I agree with you, Ali. Well, thinking in the case of Spain, I think it is commonly accepted that due to our demographic situation, we do need migrant workers, but we are unofficially accepting illegal migration because I think illegal migrant workers are cheaper. This is my vision in Spain. I suppose that in other European countries it could be something similar. So stopping irregular migration, especially the traffickers and this possibility, it would be possible, I think, if we really wanted to do so, and at the same time legal pathways could be opened, but real pathways, assuming a real figure of requests and petitions, because the legal pathway that I was talking about previously, through the asylum law in Spain, I could focus later on that, really is not supporting a lot of petitions. It is a very, very little a number of the people who really can afford or can accede to this proceeding because of a lack of people in the embassies, resources. So if the time to wait is 3 or 4 years, it is impossible for people to wait. If they are Pakistanis, for example, this way probably will not work, because this way that I'm talking about is just for situations where the life is under a very relevant, a high risk. But different legal pathways should be opened to other kind of migration that would like to come to work and to give a lot to our societies. To condemn them to look for an irregular way is what is boosting the trafficking, no? So if people knew that there are other ways, I suppose they will not trust on traffickers.
Right.
But
Very enlightening.
Let me add a quick point to what Maria was saying,
Sure.
and I was looking at a number in terms of asylum. According to European Union Agency for Asylum, there are about 50,000 applications from Pakistan for asylum seeking,
yeah,
and out
unaccepted,
of 50,000,
the petitions, but accepted, or those
and
are the
73% were rejected.
rejected.
Rejected, yeah. So like, hardly 25% were accepted. So and then those who are using this route, using the asylum route, sometimes are bringing religious persecution. I think that is the main sort of claim which many Pakistanis would make. I can imagine that not all the claims would be true, but I think that will be the leading sort of cause or leading claim that we are, our community or our family is facing persecution on religious grounds. Some of them will be true, but maybe not all the cases will be true.
Sure.
This is a perfect segue to our second section, which is arrival, asylum, and integration in Spain. So the journey has been taken. They're there in Spain, whether illegally or through asylum seeking procedures. Let's start with you, Ms. Maria. So can you tell us about the asylum process in Spain for Afghans, and how does Article 38 work in practice? I know there's something with that article. What are the biggest barriers to integration, like language, employment, housing, religion, maybe because it's not the same? And how has Netwomening created a model of support through personal connection and volunteerism? Like,
Okay.
is Spain equipped to support these, these people?
Okay, let me start with the way the Article 38 of the Spanish asylum law. I have to say that this article has been applied for first time with Afghan people. So we have this article for a time, I think more than 4 years. Well, I'm not totally sure now, but the reality is that the way was planned, that was a thought, but never had been applied when it is well, and it has been started with Afghan people. In 2021, when the Afghan, when the Taliban took control of the country, it started to be applied. And this Article 38 is a two-step process. Firstly, migrants need to get an appointment with the Spanish embassy or consulate in a third country to request the permission to go to Spain. So they ask in this step for an humanitarian visa. Secondly, once in Spain, they need to formally submit the request for asylum. But the problem is the first step, because waiting lists for the embassies to give an appointment are very long, and we know there is a backlog of more than 10,000 applications, for example, in Pakistan. So this is the challenge at that moment. If they can stay in a country, a third country as Pakistan, they can wait. It's okay, but the most of the people cannot. And what are the biggest challenges here once in Spain? You have mentioned, I think, especially language, to look for an employment and housing, and also cultural differences and religion and traditions could be sometimes a problem for some people, not for everyone, I have to say. So the main problem initially is the language. When Afghans get, for example, UK or indeed, well, of course, in the United States or indeed other countries, I think they have more facilities. Well, for example, in Germany, sometimes they can manage with English in some jobs. In Spain, you need Spanish to work, to get a job. And the language is very different. Afghan people usually have nothing to do with Spain, except translators or other people working for the embassies or for our military people there in Afghanistan, but they are a very small group of the Afghans that have came. They need to start with Spanish. Indeed, we are attending now even people that didn't know to write or to read in Dari, in Persian. So the first group of women that we supported, all of them had been working in Afghanistan as judges, journalists, teachers in the university, or just active, political activists. They knew, usually they spoke English, and sometimes, but it is easier for them to learn Spanish. And today, I have to say that 30% of women that, perhaps something like 25% of women we are supporting now, new people that have got to Spain because of the asylum of their husbands, are sometimes women that didn't speak English, even in some cases didn't read in Persian. So it is very difficult for them to start reading and learning Spanish. But without it, it's very difficult to get a job. Another difficulty for some families, especially women in Spain, is that to get a job with a veil is difficult here because the most of the companies, the most of the society understand that some is a kind of inequality and a situation of non-equality. So they ask them to work without it because we are not very used to it. And it is sometimes a problem. In my experience, women that because of traditional or religious reasons don't want have more problems. And also in general, for women with small children, as for Spanish women, it is a problem for them without the Spanish and without the recognition of their titles, of their studies in Afghanistan. They face much more problems than men. So we are focused on women, helping them to get skills, to get to improve their Spanish language, and then we support them to prepare a job interview, to get for opportunities to work. You have mentioned also the housing. The housing is a big problem in Spain for Spanish people. So it is even worse for migrants. And in the case of Afghans, if they don't have a job contract, 2 job contracts, because here it is usual to ask in a family for 2 job contracts. The salaries are not very high, so it is unrealistic to think that with one job the family can be maintained, especially if it is not with a good salary. And they have this problem to get a renting house.
Great, very insightful. Thank you. Yes, so this is when it comes to the Afghan women. I have a question for you, Ali, but it's it's a different one. I wanted to ask you about the returnees when they come back to Pakistan after being deported or voluntarily returned to Pakistan because of circumstances. Is reintegration possible? Like, do you think Pakistan is equipped to reintegrate these people after what they've been facing, and whether they are voluntarily returning or they've been deported, which means that they wouldn't have to, they wouldn't want anything to do with the country, but they still need to, live there. So how does reintegration sound like? Are there programs, especially when it comes to economy, is it possible to reintegrate them?
Yeah, I think both are happening. Both voluntary and forced deportation is happening for Pakistanis. When they come back, the first things they have to face is the authorities, the immigration authorities. They are normally taken. They are arrested. I mean, that is their first sort of the response from the authorities. They are also investigated because they want to know, authorities want to know, reach to the, let's say, the source of human smugglers, or or the people who were involved in sending them out in the first place. So that's the secondly, of course, in many of the cases, they might have sold some family asset to get them out. So there is an indebtedness. If the family becomes under debt, and that brings an additional psychological, social, and economic pressure on these.
Ali, you're there?
I can hear you, but not Ali.
Yeah, me neither. Yeah, I can't hear Ali. I think he's having a problem.
Yeah.
Let's wait for a few minutes. I'm so happy this is not live.
Yeah, yes.
You there?
Mm,
Hello?
Can you hear us, Ali?
Oh yeah, I was thrown out, but I'm back. I think I'm back again.
Okay, welcome. You can start off where we left off, so it's fine.
Thank you. So when we think about reintegration of these illegal immigrants back in Pakistan society, government of Pakistan has been like executing some small level programs with the help of international donors. EU is supporting one such program. Also, the IOM organization is doing it. Some embassies, European embassies, for instance, Dutch embassy, I'm aware of. They are running a program of reskilling. So the focus of this reintegration is essentially on reskilling or essentially providing them some level of skills. So there is an incentive for them to come back. That if they are instead of putting their lives at risk, if they want to come back to the home country, they can be better employed through the skills. So the reintegration does happen, but mostly with the help of these like embassies or international development organizations.
Right. Okay, so I think this leads us to the third phase of our podcast, which is rethinking migration policy solutions for the future. And these are like questions that I've been thinking about, and I would like some insights from both of you in this regard. So, what are the gaps in current European migration and asylum policies, especially in relation to South Asians? Like, we have a specificity here because I'm sure it's not the same when it comes to sub-Saharan Africans or North Africans or Latin Americans, because many things are different when it comes to these places, in contrast with South Asia. Should Spain and other EU countries invest more in humanitarian corridors, academic scholarships, and labor migration channels? Because these are the legal pathways, so that we provide alternatives to these oppressed or people that would like to improve their lifestyle. So instead of finding the smugglers appealing, at least they have other legal choices to choose from. And how can origin and destination countries work together to prevent dangerous irregular migration while protecting human dignity? So this is the million-dollar question, because it's all about better coordination between the origin and destination countries. If both of these sides are working on their own, then no coordination is there, and no one is winning. But unfortunately, as you know, the irregular migration card is always played in relation to pushing for economic conventions or political conventions, whatever, and it's played and it shouldn't be the case. This is a separate topic that involves desperate people, and it shouldn't be like a plaything between both countries, whether the origin or the sender, between inverted commas. So any thoughts, any comments when it comes to this regard, especially when it comes to Afghanistan and Pakistan, with Spain in particular?
Shall I? Okay. Yes, of course, I think Spain and other European countries should invest much more in humanitarian corridors, supporting people during the time they need the process to ask for a visa, not necessarily for asylum, but in other cases should be covered too. But also working on academic scholarships in the European countries, of course, in our universities to accept students from abroad, but also perhaps investing in academic exchange and programs in the universities in the origin countries. If more students in Pakistan or in other countries could study with professors with plans accepted, that then could be recognized, homologized by European authorities, universities, or other countries, they could have the possibility to study in their countries. It would be much better for the country. But of course, it requires a coordination between the governments, among governments, not only European governments, but for example, with Pakistan. And labor migrant channels, it is totally needed in Europe, and it should be improved. How? I think one thing is the data. I think we should create policies based on reliable data, because sometimes European institutions or the governments speak, but are they collecting data enough from detailed, with really the expectations, the situation of the migrants, with in-depth interviews, for example, with that give us better understanding of their needs, and what can we offer to their situations, their origin, their situation, their academic situation, their labor expectations or possibilities. We should analyze the answers and causes, and then develop programs from Europe. I think it is totally needed. But I think that sometimes policymakers don't have reliable data and information. So also the civil society should be involved. It is not a question of political policies. I think we all should be involved in the integration and inclusion of migrants in our societies. If it is done, if we did it, the acceptance of the rest of the society would be better. Their life here would be better. You asked previously about the equipment. I think in Spain we give resources. The public resources there are public resources, but in my opinion, not enough, especially for the learning of the language. As in other countries, for example, in Germany, the learning of the German language is much more there are a lot of resources, a lot of hours of classes for a migrant that have just arrived, but it is not given in Spain, so it is very difficult for people who are really concerned about learning the language. It could be easily, but there are a lot of people that when arrived in Spain are very concerned, very worried about their family situation, the threats that their family, children, husbands, sisters or brothers are facing in their country, and they don't focus very well on learning the language or other skills. And if the government or the institutions don't give enough resources and ask for results, it is impossible in a lot of cases for them to learn properly the language with a level to make it possible to work.
Thank you, Maria. Ali, any thoughts when it comes to this?
Well, I think when it comes to the solutions, of course, the countries which are involved in both origin and destination needs to work together. And the first thing I would imagine is exchange of information and protocols on in between immigration authorities. I think that is important. That how do we upgrade? Let's say in case of Pakistan, how do we upgrade our own immigration protocols, both in terms of process and also the verification, so that in terms of origin, we can actually reduce the tendency or reduce the outflow of of illegal migrants. On the other hand, there are humanitarian concerns. If, for instance, if a community is feeling or facing religious persecution, then I think on the other hand, then the destination countries should be more flexible in terms of the process of asylum and providing them, safe opportunities, providing them quick access, and helping them to actually relocate. So that is I think that is quite desirable. But when the outflow of migrants is mixed between, let's say, the economic reason and the social reason, sometimes it is not always possible to actually introduce those filters. So that's why I'm emphasizing on the enforcement on one hand, and secondly on better suited asylum process on the other hand. And the third thing is that, as I mentioned before, that many European countries and also non-European countries are facing a population challenge, and there is a shortage of labor in so many sectors, industrial sectors or commercial sectors. So in countries which are becoming the origin of illegal migrants, I think we need more awareness on these sectors, that what do we need to do so that people from these countries can become more productive and valuable source of service in the new communities or new countries. So those are some of the measures which I could think of, which needs cooperation of different countries.
Thank you, Ali. I think to conclude, I would say that to summarize what you said, it's not just a political thing. It's actually, academic institutions, NGOs, think tanks like the Mediterranean Dialogue, lay people just contributing to better, welcome these people, and also make sure that they are integrated. And of course, if they would like to go back home after a while, they're also welcome in their original country. So maybe one last thing to ask both of you before concluding this episode. If there is one thing each of you wishes policymakers understood better about this, what would it be? Because at the end of the day, even civil society activists and society at large need the decision makers to implement things. It's not just us. So if there's one thing you wish to be implemented, what would it be?
Well, if you ask me, I think we certainly need better quality of research, better quality of evidence on the dynamics of the migration, and also the patterns and the incidents of migration. I think better policies can be formed on the basis of well-informed research, and therefore the role of Mediterranean dialogue and other think tanks can be important in that respect. So maybe through this network, through this platform, we can think about like collaborative research projects in which insights from different countries can be combined. And since it's a problem not just over one country, but many countries, many regions, those research insights can be informed for a global policy on refugees and migration.
Thank you.
Yeah, I agree. Better coordination and global policies, and we have to raise awareness and for people, civil society, to be aware, to be involved in helping to get to get the inclusion and a real integration of people who come from abroad, looking for better opportunities for a different society or for just security. If the result is better, if their inclusion is real, then everything will work.
Perfect. Thank you very much for such insightful discussion. We've been talking over an hour. Thank you so much for being with us, and looking forward to other episodes, maybe in the Mediterranean Voices. Thank you so much for everything.
Thank you, Tasneem.
Thank you.
And thank you, Maria.
Thank you.
Thank you for
Bye.
you, Tasneem. Bye.